Welcome to this edition of Market Mantra, in which we give you a complete update on the economic, business and stock market news of the day. I am Kamal Saxena and with me is my co-anchor in Hindi, Manoj Pathak.
नमस्कार, मार्केट मंत्र के ताजा अंक में आपका स्वागत है। आधे घंटे के इस कार्यक्रम में हमेशा की तरह हम देश और दुनिया की चुनी हुई कारोबारी, आर्थिक और शेयर बाजार से संबंधित ताजा खबरों को लेकर हाजिर हैं। हमारे साथ खबरों पर ऑनलाइन चर्चा के लिए आमंत्रित हैं वरिष्ठ आर्थिक पत्रकार सुषमा रामचंद्रन। सुषमा जी नमस्कार, कार्यक्रम में आपका स्वागत है।
वेलकम सुषमा जी।
थैंक यू।
आइए शुरुआत करते हैं अंग्रेजी में हेडलाइंस से, जिसे लेकर मौजूद हैं कमल सक्सेना।
Key domestic stocks climb more than 3% amid mixed global cues. Sensex regains the 58,000 mark. Nifty reclaims the 17,300 level. Overall, Indian exports grow more than 36% in last month, and Brent crude prices fall to $93.50 amid de-escalation between Russia and Ukraine.
अंतर्राष्ट्रीय बाजारों से मिले जुले रुख के बीच घरेलू शेयर बाजार में जबरदस्त लिवाली, 3% से अधिक बढ़त में रहे प्रमुख सूचकांक। एक बार फिर से सेंसेक्स 58,000 और निफ्टी 17,300 के स्तर से ऊपर आए। देश का निर्यात पिछले महीने 36% से अधिक बढ़ा और रूस तथा यूक्रेन के बीच युद्ध की आशंका कम होने से ब्रेंट कच्चे तेल की कीमत घटकर $93.50 प्रति बैरल पर आई। अंतर्राष्ट्रीय बाजारों से मिले जुले रुख के बीच घरेलू शेयर बाजार में कल की गिरावट के बाद आज जबरदस्त लिवाली की गई और प्रमुख सूचकांक 3% से अधिक बढ़त के साथ बंद हुए। सेंसेक्स एक बार फिर से 58,000 और निफ्टी 17,350 के स्तर से ऊपर उठकर बंद हुए। बॉम्बे स्टॉक एक्सचेंज का सेंसेक्स कारोबार के अंत में 1,736 अंक यानी 3.08% की बढ़त के साथ 58,142 पर बंद हुआ। उधर नेशनल स्टॉक एक्सचेंज का निफ्टी 510 अंक यानी 3.03% की बढ़त लेकर 17,352 दर्ज हुआ। छोटी और मझौली कंपनियों के शेयरों की लिवाली भी तेज रही, लेकिन इनका प्रदर्शन सेंसेक्स और निफ्टी पैक की तुलना में थोड़ा सा कमजोर रहा। बीएसई मिड कैप इंडेक्स 2.68% लाभ के साथ बंद हुआ। स्मॉल कैप इंडेक्स में 1.97% की वृद्धि हुई।
At the stock markets, the Sensex and the Nifty today gained more than 3% amid mixed global cues. The Sensex at the Bombay Stock Exchange closed above 58,100 points, while the Nifty at National Stock Exchange ended above 17,350 level. The Sensex climbed 1,736 points or 3.1% to settle at 58,142. The Nifty surged 510 points or 3% to 17,352. In the broader market at the BSE, the mid-cap jumped 2.7% and the small-cap index gained 2%. In the Sensex pack, all companies logged gains. Bajaj Finance was top gainer as it rose 5.1%, followed by SBI, which added 4.6%. Bajaj Finserv gained 4.4%. Larsen Toubro climbed 4.3% and Titan surged 4.1%. Sectorally, all indices jumped up. Auto gained the most as it appreciated 3.9%, followed by BankX, which rose 3.5%. Consumer discretionary goods and services closed 3.4% up and telecom added 3.2%. The overall breadth of the BSE trade was positive as shares of 2,048 companies gained while 1,330 fell. Shares of 86 companies remained unchanged.
नजर डालते हैं रुपए की स्थिति पर। अंतर बैंकिंग विदेशी मुद्रा बाजार में $1 की तुलना में रुपया 26 पैसे मजबूत हुआ, 75 रुपए 34 पैसे के स्तर पर बंद हुआ। उधर दुनिया की 6 अन्य प्रमुख मुद्राओं की तुलना में डॉलर की स्थिति दर्शाने वाला सूचकांक अंतर दिवसीय कारोबार में 0.28% घटकर 96.1 पर आ गया। सुषमा जी, कल बाजार में हमने ठीक ठाक बिकवाली देखी और कल जैसे बिकवाली देखी वैसे ही आज लिवाली का जोर हमने देखा निवेशकों के बीच। लगभग सभी सेक्टर में अच्छी खासी तेजी रही। क्या प्रमुख कारण रहे?
देखिए, सबसे बड़ा कारण वो है जियोपॉलिटिकल स्तर पर जो जियोपॉलिटिकल टेंशन, जिसकी वजह से कल मार्केट में इतनी बड़ी भारी गिरावट आई कि आज ये जो बाउंस बैक हो रहा है ये उसी वजह से है कि वहां पर ये खबरें ये आ रही हैं कि वहां पर टेंशन कम हो रही है, कि रूस ने अपनी जो फौज है उसको थोड़ी बहुत अपने वापस की ली है। अभी तक सारी उनकी जो उनकी फौज काफी बॉर्डर पर थी, यूक्रेन के बॉर्डर पर थी, और डर ये था कि शायद वो इन्वेड ना कर दें यूक्रेन को। लेकिन हाल लगता है कि कुछ डिप्लोमेटिक मीडिएशन हुआ है, कुछ बातचीत हुआ है रूस और अमेरिका के बीच में, या रूस और यूरोपीय देशों के बीच में, और रूस ने अपनी जो फौज है थोड़ी सी पीछे हटा ली है। अब ये सबसे बड़ा कारण तो ये है, हालांकि और भी कारण है। एक तो तेल के दाम इसी वजह से गिर गए हैं, $2-3 पर बैरल, उसका भी एक असर है, क्योंकि अगर तेल के दाम बढ़ते जाते वो हमारे लिए, हमारे देश के लिए ये बहुत दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण मतलब स्थिति है। तो इस वजह से भी मार्केट्स का कि अभी बाउंस बैक हुआ है कि भाई तेल के दाम थोड़े से गिरे हैं। तो ये मोटे तौर पे यही बड़ी चीज है आज के मार्केट्स में, क्योंकि मार्केट्स का समझ लीजिए रिलीफ हुआ है और वो जो इतना बेरिश ट्रेंड था वो रिवर्स हो गया।
So, Sushma ji, market is in a totally unpredictable territory for next few weeks to come because the issue has yet to resolve. So, how these are the foreign situations, external conditions which we are going to witness for some time to come. But what are the domestic factors which are affecting the market?
Well, domestic factors right now, of course, we have just had the budget, and the budget has, the budget has certainly cheered the markets because there was a very substantial increase in capital expenditure anticipated for the next financial year. And there's also anticipation that this current year will end with 9.2% growth, which is fairly high, even though it's on a very, very low base. But the idea is that the economy is coming back to normal. So these are, of course, factors. But on the negative side, of course, inflation is going up. It has gone up to about 6%, crossing the RBI's safe band. So that could be a negative factor. But otherwise, there are fairly positive indicators as far as the domestic economy is concerned. At the same time, the stock market has to contend now, apart when we talk of geopolitical tensions, we also have to talk about external factors like what is happening in the US Federal Reserve with the tightening of the easy money policy and the fact that interest rates are going to be rising there. So the foreign institutional investors are gradually taking their money out from these markets, from emerging markets, and going back to places where they're going to get higher returns. So this is a factor also which is affecting the markets because, money is being taken out from these markets. So, whether you can call it an external factor or something happening domestically, but certainly this is a factor. As I said, right now the outlook is fairly good as far as the domestic economy is concerned because there's a revival in many sectors of the economy. But much will depend on what happens externally between Russia and Ukraine. As you rightly said, there is, things we have to see what is going on in the next few days because if diplomatic, there's been some mediation today, this has not removed the threat of conflict completely. It will probably take 2 or 3 weeks before the entire scenario settles down.
So, Sushma ji, we are going for a break. We will continue with this discussion after the break.
बड़े भैया इस कहावत को जरा एक्सप्लेन तो करिए कि पैसा पैसा जोड़ के बन जाए रुपया।
सिंपल है छोटे कि इन्वेस्टमेंट थोड़े से पैसों से भी शुरू हो सकता है भैया।
ओहो तो ये बात है।
हाँ छोटे, आज थोड़े से पैसों को सही जगह लगाएंगे तो कल जरूरत के वक्त पर वही काम आएंगे।
बड़े भैया
छोटे,
भारत के सबसे बड़े स्टॉक एक्सचेंज NSE द्वारा निवेशकों के हित में जारी।
Back to the program Market Mantra. Sushma ji, you were talking about the economy is on the path of recovery, but still there are a few sectors which are lagging behind. So how do you see in hindsight the steps taken by the government to revive the economy, particularly offering loan guarantees to MSME sector?
Well, that is, that has had a positive result. I mean, this step was taken earlier. It was taken last year. The data shows that, large number of MSMEs have taken advantage of this particular window. And in this budget, they have extended these credit guarantees by 50,000 crores, especially for the hospitality sector, which has been badly affected by the pandemic. But personally, I feel that the government needed to have done more for MSMEs because, they are the ones who have suffered the most over the last 2 years because they are the ones who have had to repeatedly face, of course, even large companies have had to face closures, but large companies have much larger resources. They can bounce back from this whole, crisis much more easily. MSMEs, many of them are very tiny units who come into the informal sector of the economy. They are finding it difficult to reopen, especially in the hospitality sector. I mean, you have small restaurants, hotels, and of course even the larger companies like airlines. To get back to normal has been very difficult for this sector. And I think it has also affected employment because this is the informal sector of the economy is a very large employer also. So this is an area where I feel probably the government could have done some more, but they are of course taking a very, in a sense a correct approach and decided that they will fund, make large investments in infrastructure. The infrastructure projects will create jobs as well, and they will provide, opportunities for all these other small businesses to take part in the process of revival.
सुषमा जी, बाजार में यदि हम आज के कारोबार को और कल के कारोबार के दोनों दिन की हम तुलना करें तो हम बहुत एक तेज कह लें कि गिरावट और उछाल देखते हैं। ऐसे में जो छोटे निवेशक हैं, छोटे हमारे कह लें कि आम श्रोता हैं, उनको अपना व्यवहार किस तरह रखने का सुझाव आप देंगे? क्योंकि बाजार जब गिर रहा होता है और बहुत तेज गिरावट हो रही होती है तो मन में डर होता है, और इसी तरह जब अचानक उठता हुआ हम देखते हैं तो मन में उत्साह जगता है। ऐसे में एक आम यानी कह लें कि हमारा श्रोता क्या व्यवहार अपना रखे बाजार के प्रति?
ये इस वक्त जब वॉलेटिलिटी इतनी ज्यादा हो रही है अभी 2-3 महीने से, तो मेरे ख्याल में जो छोटा निवेशक है उनको काफी कॉशन से प्रोसीड करना चाहिए और उनको किसी एक दिन के कारोबार से अपना बेचना या खरीदना की बात नहीं सोचनी चाहिए। उनको लॉन्ग टर्म में देखना चाहिए कि ये कंपनी, इसके फंडामेंटल, इसके प्रॉफिट लॉस कैसे हैं, इसका प्राइस अर्निंग रेशियोज कैसे हैं, ये सारे विषयों के ऊपर स्टडी करके उस कंपनी के बारे में सोचकर तभी इन्वेस्टमेंट करना चाहिए। और ये जो उतार चढ़ाव है उसको थोड़ा सा उसके पीछे थोड़ा सा हटना चाहिए, क्योंकि अगर आप एकदम से मार्केट में आएंगे जब गिरावट होगी कि आप सोच रहे कि हम सस्ते में खरीद लेंगे, जो बॉटम फीडिंग कहते हैं, या जब मार्केट हाई में जाएगी तो एकदम से आप बेच डालेंगे, तो ये आपको लॉन्ग टर्म आपका फायदा नहीं होगा। तो मेरे ख्याल में थोड़ी सी कॉशन के साथ छोटे निवेशकों को रहना चाहिए।
यहाँ पर श्रोताओं एक विराम हम लेना चाहेंगे। विराम के बाद फिर से हाजिर होंगे लेकर कार्यक्रम मार्केट मंत्र। बने रहिए हमारे साथ।
उपभोक्ताओं तक पहुंचने का सुलभ और सस्ता माध्यम है आकाशवाणी।
आकाशवाणी के विभिन्न केंद्रों से कीजिए अपने उत्पादों और सेवाओं का प्रचार विज्ञापनों के माध्यम से।
लोकल और राष्ट्रीय स्तर पर कीजिए अपने बिजनेस का विस्तार, क्योंकि आकाशवाणी में विज्ञापन बुकिंग हुई बहुत ही आसान।
अब घर, दफ्तर या दुकान पर बैठे बैठे आप कर सकते हैं विज्ञापनों की बुकिंग।
डायल कीजिए 870-001-4242।
नंबर एक बार फिर नोट करें, 870-001-4242।
Welcome back to the program Market Mantra. Sushma ji, one more thing about when it comes to government's policy, one more criticism of this government comes from the front of privatization and disinvestment. How do you see government's performance here on this front?
Well, I think the big achievement that has taken place is, of course, the privatization of Air India, and I think this is really a very major achievement because the company had such huge losses, and also efforts had been made in the past to sell it. They had not succeeded. So this is certainly a milestone, I think, and I think it sets the tone for what is going to happen in future. Last year, the Finance Minister laid out a pipeline of companies, public sector companies, which are ready for disinvestment as well as for privatization. I also think, as far as criticism is concerned, my criticism certainly is that for the last 2-3 years, they have not met their disinvestment targets. They have set them very ambitiously high, but for some reason they have not gone into the market and done the disinvestment.
And this time the target is 62,000 crore rupees only, 65,000.
Yes, so this year it is much lower. It's a very modest target. In fact, if they spend just BPCL alone, they should be able, the valuation of BPCL, Bharat Petroleum, is about 78,000 crores. So if they sell that during the year, then they will cross that target. But I have to point out that the Finance Minister was asked this question, the same question, in post-budget briefings, and she said that, for the last 2 years, because of the pandemic, there has been a lot of preoccupation in, just handling the pandemic, that probably it was not thought, it was very difficult to get, to handle this kind of also, which is a very sensitive matter, because you are going into the stock markets and you're trying to raise resources at, probably at a time, hoping that you will go into the market at the right time. So this was the reason that she gave, that they had not gone into the market for this reason. So hopefully, with the pandemic having receded, this year they have, as you pointed out also, fixed a very low target this year. Let's hope they can exceed it and, maybe achieve the goal of privatizing some of these companies as well as disinvestment.
आइए चलें अब वैश्विक बाजारों की ओर। एशिया और यूरोप के शेयर बाजारों में आज मिला जुला रुख कुल मिलाकर दिखा है। रूस और यूक्रेन के बीच युद्ध जैसी आशंकाओं से सोने जैसे सुरक्षित निवेश में खरीदारों की दिलचस्पी भी दिखी। चीन का शंघाई कंपोजिट इंडेक्स निवेशकों की सक्रिय भागीदारी से आज 0.5% लाभ के साथ बंद हुआ। सिंगापुर का स्ट्रीट्स टाइम्स इंडेक्स बिना किसी उतार चढ़ाव के अपने पूर्व स्तर के आसपास बना रहा। उधर बिकवाली के दबाव में दक्षिण कोरिया का कौस्पी 0.1% नीचे आ गया। जापान के निक्केई 225 और हांगकांग के हेंग सेंग दोनों सूचकांकों में 0.8% की गिरावट हुई। यूरोपीय बाजार की ओर चलें तो समाचार तैयार किए जाने तक वहां लिवाली का सिलसिला दिख रहा था। अंतर्दिवसीय कारोबार में लंदन का FTSE 100 0.7% की बढ़त के साथ चल रहा था। फ्रांस के CAC 40 में 1.6% की तेजी थी। जर्मनी का डैक्स 1.8% ऊपर कारोबार कर रहा था।
At the stock markets, the three major indexes closed modestly lower yesterday. They fell amid a sharp sell-off as U.S. plans to close its Kyiv embassy in Ukraine sent simmering geopolitical tensions to a boil. All three major U.S. stock indexes dropped sharply after U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken announced the relocation of U.S. diplomatic operations to western Ukraine in a possible sign of an imminent Russian invasion. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 0.5%, the S&P 500 declined 0.4% and the Nasdaq Composite Index ended flat.
यहाँ पर हम श्रोताओं लेना चाहेंगे एक छोटा सा विराम के बाद फिर से हाजिर होंगे लेकर कार्यक्रम मार्केट मंत्र। बने रहिए हमारे साथ।
बड़े भैया, इस कहावत को जरा एक्सप्लेन तो करिए कि बूंद बूंद से सागर भर जाता है।
सिंपल है छोटे, कि छोटी छोटी इन्वेस्टमेंट जुड़कर बड़ी इन्वेस्टमेंट बन जाती है।
ओ, तो ये बात है।
हाँ छोटे, जब ढेर सारे पैसे होंगे उस दिन का इंतजार मत करिए, जितना भी पैसा हो इन्वेस्ट करना शुरू करिए।
बड़े भैया,
अरे छोटे,
भारत के सबसे बड़े स्टॉक एक्सचेंज NSE द्वारा निवेशकों के हित में जारी।
Welcome back to the Market Mantra. Sushma ji, there was a data which came from Japanese economy. The economy grew at 5.4% on the annual basis in the last quarter of 2021. How do you see this, particularly in a situation when there were lockdowns in Asia and every country was affected?
Sorry, this data is for which country? 5 point...
Japan.
Japan.
Yeah.
Yes, so, in fact, 5 point whatever percent is very high for Japan. For a developed country, normally...
Yeah, that's on annual basis, yeah.
Oh, on an annual basis. Yes, even then, it is for countries like, for developed countries, the growth rates are generally much smaller than for countries like India, which require at least 9 or maybe 10% growth every year to achieve what they want to. But yes, Japan also has been going through a slump in recent years, and I think the whole of Asia has been affected by the pandemic. Countries like who have been fast growing, the Asian tiger economies, these smaller, Malaysia and Thailand, Taiwan, even they have not been growing at the pace that they have been doing in the past. In fact, in comparison to that, India's growth of 9.2% is amongst the highest, one of the highest in the world, and we have even probably surpassed China this year. So this is something that I think it's a global issue, and the pandemic has affected everyone. Also, it has impacted on inflation. You have a country like the United States, which normally has inflation of 2 to 3%. They're now facing inflation of 6 to 7% or even higher. And India, of course, in fact, is probably relatively lower at about 6%, even though this is something that the RBI is keen to control. So these are issues that are faced by all countries all over the world. Every country is trying to face it in its own way. India has not done the kind of fiscal stimulus that many other countries have done. They have adopted a more conservative approach. One of the reasons being that we do not have the huge resources that developed countries do have, and I think this conservative approach is probably yielding dividends now.
Yeah, in more news, India's overall exports in January this year are estimated to be $61.4 billion, exhibiting a positive growth of 36.8% over the same period last year. Overall imports in January this year are estimated to be $67.8 billion, exhibiting a slower rate of growth of 30.5% over the same period last year. India's overall exports in April to January 2021-22 are estimated to be $545.7 billion. This is a positive growth of 37.7% over the same period last year. Overall imports in April to January 2021-22 are estimated to be $617 billion, exhibiting a positive growth of 54.4% over the same period last year. So there is a huge positive news from exports, and there is a large contribution from electronic items. How do you see this?
I think first of all, the rate of growth, of course, it is very impressive. But a more realistic comparison would be with 2019-20, because that was the pre-pandemic year, And the comparison, the data percentages that you are giving are comparison of the last fiscal, which was the pandemic year, and everything was very depressed. But even so, I believe that exports are rising at the rate of about 25%, even compared to the pre-pandemic era. So that is really very impressive. One of the reasons, of course, is the surge in demand globally for goods, which is one can only hope that it will continue. The second is that Indian exporters obviously have geared up to provide products, in quality products which are finding a market everywhere. And you talked about electronic products. Electronic goods are an area where we have made a mark over the last 4 to 5 years because of the launch of the PLI scheme, the Production Linked Incentive Scheme. It is much talked about now, but it started in the electronic sector. And the idea was to ensure that instead of just having software exports, we should have hardware exports as well, hardware production within the country, and that has really yielded results. So exports is now looking to be, in fact, one of the major growth areas of the economy, and I think that the government needs to try and give more incentives to exporters, in fact, one of the factors that that really give a push to exports is rupee depreciation. People are always worried about depreciation of the rupee, but this is the depreciation, devaluation always helps exporters to become more competitive in global markets. So hopefully this kind of surge in exports will continue next year also.
सुषमा जी, यहाँ पर यदि हम समझना चाहें कि कौन सा ऐसा सेक्टर आपको दिख रहा है कि जहाँ इंसेंटिव दिए जाने से अपेक्षाकृत बेहतर परिणाम हमें अभी के जो हालात हैं उसमें मिल सकते हैं?
देखिए, सेक्टर्स
बहुत संक्षिप्त में जी।
सेक्टर्स तो मेरे ख्याल में सब बहुत की सेक्टर, एग्रीकल्चरल एक्सपोर्ट्स एक बहुत बड़ा एरिया है जहां इस वक्त बहुत डिमांड है और एक्सपोर्ट्स बहुत बढ़ रही है, तो मेरे ख्याल ये एक एरिया है.
In energy news, global crude oil prices today dropped more than 3% from its 7-year high. The crude prices fell after Russia said some of its military units were returning to their bases after exercises near Ukraine, a move that appeared to de-escalate tension between Moscow and the West. In intraday trade, Brent crude was trading around $93.50 per barrel, while US crude prices were at $92.10 per barrel.
बस यहीं पर श्रोताओं की ओर से सुषमा जी हम आपको बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देना चाहेंगे.
थैंक यू मनोज.
आइए चलें सर्राफा बाजार की ओर. मल्टी कमोडिटी एक्सचेंज में आज सोने और चांदी की चमक फीकी रही. अप्रैल महीने के वायदा कारोबार में सोने का मूल्य 600 रुपए घटकर 49,320 रुपए प्रति 10 ग्राम पर आ गया. वहीं मार्च के वायदा कारोबार में चांदी 1,230 रुपए फिसले 63,000 रुपए प्रति किलोग्राम के स्तर पर आ गई. अंतर्राष्ट्रीय बाजारों में भी सोने का मूल्य थोड़ा सा घटा है. $1,846.10 प्रति औंस पर सोना आ गया.
Before we close, a reminder of the headlines. Key domestic stocks climb more than 3% amid mixed global cues. Sensex regains the 58,000 mark. Nifty reclaims the 17,300 level. Overall, Indian exports grow more than 36% in last month. And Brent crude prices fall to $93.50 amid de-escalation between Russia and Ukraine. And that's it in this edition of Market Mantra. For now, goodbye.
Market Mantra.